In the middle of a brutal snowstorm, a young boy is found carrying 3 babies, their tiny lives clinging to his every step. But when a billionaire offers him a chance at safety, the question remains, will he risk it all for a family he never thought possible? This is a story of survival, hope, and the power of second chances. Stay tuned. The wind howled like a wild beast across the quiet back roads of Maple Creek, a small town tucked deep in the Colorado mountains. Snowflakes fell thick and fast, turning the world into a blur of white. Most people were huddled inside their homes, fireplaces crackling and cocoa steaming. But out on the edge of town, trudging down a desolate road, was a boy no older than 12. His name was Eli Walker, and his thin jacket was no match for the biting cold. In his arms were 3 bundled infants wrapped in old blankets. Their faces were red from the cold, but they didn't cry. Maybe they were too tired, or maybe they sensed Eli's fear and exhaustion. Eli had no real plan. He just knew he couldn't stay in the abandoned cabin anymore. The food had run out 2 days ago, and the firewood was long gone. He had been scavenging what little he could find, but with the snowstorm growing worse, it was clear. They wouldn't survive another night. The babies weren't his. He barely knew them. Their mother, a woman named Stacy, had left them in his care 2 weeks ago, promising to return. She never did. He didn't understand why she chose him, a kid she met at a shelter who helped her carry groceries. But he couldn't just leave the babies. He named them himself, Hope, Charlie, and Luna. Hope was the quiet one. Charlie always wriggled around, and Luna had the loudest cry he'd ever heard. They were the only family he had now. As he stumbled past a gated driveway, headlights cut through the snow behind him. Panicked, he turned, shielding the babies with his back. A black SUV rolled to a stop beside him, the window lowering to reveal a man in his early 40s with salt and pepper hair and a sharp jawline. "You all right, kid?" the man asked, leaning closer. "You need help?" Eli stood frozen. Trust was a rare thing in his world, but his legs were shaking, and he could barely feel his fingers. Please," Eli said, his voice breaking. "They're cold." The man stared at the bundled babies, then back at Eli. "Get in," he said without hesitation. "I've got heat and food. You can warm them up in the car." Eli hesitated for only a second before nodding. The man jumped out, opened the door, and helped him in gently. "What's your name?" the man asked as he cranked up the heat. "Eli." "I'm Matthew Carter," the man replied. "You just stepped into a better day, Eli." As the car rolled up the winding driveway toward a sprawling mansion lit with warm lights, Eli couldn't stop the tears from sliding down his cheeks. He didn't know where this was going, but for the first time in weeks, he felt like someone might actually care. The SUV purred up the long, curving driveway, tires crunching over the packed snow. As the trees cleared, the house came into view. It wasn't just a house, it was a mansion. 3 stories tall, its windows glowed with warm yellow light, and snow had piled perfectly along the slate-gray roof. For Eli, it looked more like something from a Christmas movie than a real place. Eli tightened his grip on the babies as the car pulled to a stop in front of the large double doors. Matthew Carter stepped out first, brushing snow off his coat, then opened the door for Eli. "Come on, let's get you and the little ones inside," he said. Eli's legs were shaky as he stepped out into the cold again. He followed Matthew through the front doors into a grand foyer. The warmth hit him like a wave, and he blinked as his eyes adjusted to the cozy lighting. Hardwood floors, elegant rugs, and a staircase that split in two like something out of a fairy tale. It was nothing like the shelter or the cracked walls of the old cabin. A woman in her late 50s appeared from one of the hallways. She had a kind face and wore an apron over her sweater. "Matthew, what on earth?" "This is Eli," Matthew interrupted gently. "And he's not alone. We need warm blankets, baby bottles if we have any, and maybe the guest room ready. Something on the first floor." The woman's eyes softened immediately. "Of course. I'll take care of it." She turned to Eli with a smile. "I'm Mrs. Delaney. You're safe now, sweetheart." Eli nodded, unsure of what to say. His jaw was tight from stress and cold, but her words felt like a warm blanket. They led him to a sitting room where a fire crackled in a stone fireplace. Matthew motioned for him to sit on the couch, and Eli slowly lowered himself down, careful not to wake Hope and Charlie. Luna was already beginning to stir, her lips quivering into a quiet cry. Within minutes, Mrs. Delaney returned with warmed bottles, soft blankets, and a fresh change of baby clothes. "You feed them," she said gently, handing Eli a bottle. "I'll help with the rest." Eli worked slowly, clumsily even, but he managed to get Hope to drink. Luna was next, wailing until the bottle was in her mouth. Charlie was still asleep. Matthew sat across from him, watching silently. Finally, he spoke. "You don't have to explain everything right now, but I want to help. So when you're ready, I'd like to know how you ended up out there." Eli glanced up. There was no judgment in the man's eyes, only patience. "Okay," Eli said quietly. "I'll tell you." But as the baby settled, the warmth crept into his bones, and his eyelids began to close. Matthew nodded. "You can tell me tomorrow. Tonight you rest." Eli didn't respond. His head sank against the back of the couch as the crackling, fire, and soft murmurs of safety lulled him into sleep. For the first time in what felt like forever, Eli didn't dream of hunger or cold. He dreamed of safety. Eli woke to the smell of cinnamon and bacon. For a second, he didn't know where he was. Then his eyes landed on the stone fireplace, the velvet couch, and the soft blanket someone had tucked around him. He sat up fast, heart racing. The babies. He looked around in a panic. "They're fine." Matthew's voice came from the hallway. He stepped into the room carrying a tray, pancakes, eggs, fruit, and orange juice. "They're still sleeping." Mrs. Delaney set up cribs in the guest room across the hall. "You looked like you needed the rest." Eli let out a shaky breath and nodded. He felt embarrassed, weak even. He was supposed to be protecting the babies. "Sit down," Matthew said, placing the tray on a low table. "Eat." Eli hesitated, then picked up a fork. The food was warm and real, so different from the cans of beans and stale crackers he'd been living on. "Thank you," Eli mumbled, not looking up. Matthew took a seat across from him, his tone calm and even. "You ready to talk about what happened?" Eli chewed slowly, trying to find the words. He wasn't sure where to start, so he went back to the day it all changed. "My mom left when I was 6, he began, voice flat. "I bounced around homes after that, group homes, shelters. I'd run when it got bad. It usually got bad." Matthew said nothing, just listened. "Last month, I was staying at a drop-in shelter near Riverview. That's where I met a lady named Stacy. She had these 3 babies, barely a couple months old. Said she had no one. I helped her get food, carry stuff. She was nice to me." Eli paused, gripping the fork tighter. "Then one night, she asked if I could watch them. Said she just needed a few hours. Gave me the keys to this abandoned cabin she'd found. She never came back." Matthew's brows furrowed. "Did you tell anyone?" Eli looked up, eyes suddenly fierce. "Who would believe me? A kid with 3 babies? I'd be split from them. They'd go into foster care and I couldn't let that happen. So I stayed. I tried to take care of them." His voice cracked at the end, and he looked away ashamed. "I named them. Hope, Charlie, Luna. I know it's stupid." "No," Matthew said, voice low. "It's not stupid. It's brave." Eli blinked. Matthew leaned forward. "What you did, carrying them in the snow, trying to keep them warm, feeding them with whatever you had, that's more than most adults would have done." A lump formed in Eli's throat. "You're not alone anymore, Eli," Matthew continued. "I'm going to help you, but we'll need to do this the right way. There are people we'll have to call, but I promise I'll be with you through it." Eli nodded slowly. He didn't know how this man came into his life, or why he cared, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel like just a problem to be passed around. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he belonged. That afternoon, a quiet tension settled over the mansion. The babies napped in their new cribs while Eli sat at the window in the guest room, watching the snowflakes melt against the glass. He clutched a cup of cocoa, the warmth in his hands contrasting the unease in his chest. Downstairs, Matthew Carter was on the phone. Eli couldn't hear the words, but he could feel what was happening. Things were shifting, changing. and he wasn't sure if it was for the better or worse. The door creaked open. Matthew stepped in, dressed now in a more casual sweater and jeans, but still carrying the same calm authority. He sat in the armchair across from Eli. "I called someone I trust," he said. "Her name's Jordan Kelly. She works in family services, but not the way you're thinking. She's not just trying to throw kids in homes. She helps sort out custody issues, does emergency support. If there's any chance of keeping you with the babies, she'll help figure it out." Eli's throat tightened. "So, they're still gonna take them?" "We don't know yet," Matthew said gently, "but they need to know the truth. If Stacy was their mother, we'll need to track her down. And if not, well, we'll figure it out together." Eli nodded slowly, heart pounding. An hour later, Jordan arrived. She was in her 30s with a warm smile and sharp eyes. She didn't dress like a government worker. No clipboard, no suit. Just jeans, boots, and a winter jacket with fur around the hood. She crouched down when she first met Eli, like someone greeting a scared animal. "I'm here to listen," she said, "not to scare you." They sat at the dining table while the babies stayed with Mrs. Delaney. Eli told his story again, this time slower, with Matthew at his side. Jordan took notes but never interrupted, except to ask small clarifying questions. When he finished, she sat back and sighed. "Okay," she said. "First off, what you did, Eli, was extraordinary. No one's going to punish you for protecting those babies. That said, we need to find out where they came from. Do you know Stacy's last name?" Eli shook his head. She never said. "Did she mention any relatives? Friends?" "She talked about Texas once. Said she was trying to get back there, but didn't have money?" Jordan nodded. "That helps. We can start there." Eli looked up. "What happens to them now?" "Well," Jordan said carefully, "they'll need to be placed somewhere safe until we find out more. But," she glanced at Matthew, "there's the option of a temporary guardian, someone stable, someone like Matthew." Eli turned, stunned. You'd do that?" Matthew didn't hesitate. "I already have the space, the resources, and I care. I wouldn't let you be separated unless there was no other choice." Tears welled up in Eli's eyes. Jordan smiled. "It's not official yet, but it's a start. I'll file for emergency guardianship tonight." Eli didn't know what to say. All he knew was that for the first time since the cabin, there was hope. The next few days passed like a dream Eli couldn't quite believe was real. He woke up each morning in a warm bed, the sound of birds chirping just outside the frost-tipped window. There were no rats scuttling under floorboards, no sirens in the distance, only the soft cooing of babies and the smell of breakfast drifting up from the kitchen. He didn't sleep much, though, not because of fear or cold, but because the babies, especially Luna, had no regard for schedules. Still, for every late-night bottle or diaper emergency, Matthew or Mrs. Delaney was there to help. Eli had never seen grown-ups share responsibility like that. It felt safe, real. On the fourth morning, he stood in the kitchen in socks that were actually his size, bouncing hope on one hip while Mrs. Delaney showed him how to make pancakes. She let him crack the eggs and stir the batter. "You're a natural," she said with a smile. Eli grinned, flour on his cheek. "Yeah, I never cooked anything but canned soup before." "Then you're leveling up fast, sweetheart." Matthew came in wearing joggers and a Colorado State hoodie, holding Charlie in one arm and a half-read newspaper in the other. "What's the breakfast situation, Chef Eli?" "Flipping pancakes in 5, Eli said, surprising himself with how natural it felt to answer that way. They sat down to eat together, Eli, Matthew, and the 3 babies nestled in their high chairs or carriers nearby. It was the kind of family scene Eli had only seen on TV. He hadn't realized how empty his life felt until now, sitting at a real table with people who wanted him there. As they ate, Matthew looked up. "So I got a call from Jordan this morning." Eli paused mid-bite. "What did she say?" "She started the paperwork. It'll take some time to work through the legal stuff, but for now, I'm your emergency guardian. Yours and the babies." Eli blinked. "So we stay here?" "For now," Matthew confirmed. "We're going to keep things stable. Jordan's team is still trying to locate Stacy or any next of kin. But until then, this is your home." Eli looked down at his plate, overwhelmed. "Are you okay with that?" Matthew asked carefully. Eli nodded slowly. "Yeah, I never had a home that didn't have a time limit." Matthew reached across the table and gave Eli's shoulder a firm, steady squeeze. "Well, let's change that." Later that afternoon, while the babies napped, Matthew showed Eli the big sunroom at the back of the mansion. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a frozen pond and a row of evergreens. "This can be your space," Matthew said. "We can fill it with books, art supplies, whatever you want." Eli pressed his hand to the cold glass, stunned. He wasn't used to people making space for him, literally or otherwise. "I don't know how to say thank you," he whispered. "You already have," Matthew replied. And for the first time in his life, Eli let himself believe he might not just be surviving anymore. He might be beginning. It was the following week when the past finally came knocking. Eli was in the sunroom, building a makeshift fort out of couch cushions with Hope and Luna, while Charlie dozed in a rocker nearby. The babies giggled as Eli ducked under the fort flap, pretending to be a grumpy bear. Their laughter filled the room like sunlight. Then Mrs. Delaney's voice called gently from the hall. "Eli, Jordan's here, and she's brought someone." Eli froze. He looked at Hope, her tiny hand still clutching a plush elephant, then back at Mrs. Delaney's uncertain expression. He felt the warmth drain from his face. He followed her to the sitting room, where Jordan stood by the fireplace. Next to her was a woman, tired, gaunt, and bundled in an old coat. Her eyes flicked up when Eli entered, red-rimmed and full of something between guilt and fear. It was Stacy. "Eli," she said, stepping forward. Eli's entire body went stiff. Jordan held up a hand calmly. "She's not here to take them and disappear again. She asked to speak with you, with supervision." Eli stared. "You left us." "I know," Stacy said, voice breaking. "I was desperate. I thought I'd come back in a day or two. I didn't mean for it to be weeks. I ran out of options, out of money, out of people to trust. And I didn't think you'd actually stay, take care of them." "I did," Eli said, trying to keep his voice level. "Because someone had to." Stacy nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I was in a shelter in Texas, got picked up by Outreach, and they helped me find my way back. I told them about you, about the babies. I never stopped thinking about you." Jordan stepped in gently. "We verified her ID and background. She's clean. No charges, no history of abuse. Just hardship. But the question is, what happens next?" Eli looked at Matthew, who was now standing by the doorway, arms folded, not pushing, just present. "I'm not trying to take them away from you, Eli," Stacy said. "I just want to make things right. I want to be their mom again. I know I messed up, but I've got support now." Eli's thoughts swirled. He remembered the cold nights, the babies crying, the weight of carrying all three of them through a snowstorm. But he also remembered Stacy's kindness, her way of talking gently to Charlie, singing to Luna when she couldn't sleep. "I don't know what's right," Eli admitted. I don't want to lose them." Jordan nodded. "Then we find a way that works for everyone. There's no law that says families can't be built in unexpected ways." Stacy gave a small smile. "If you'll let me, maybe we can raise them together." Eli's eyes widened. "Like co-parent?" "More like co-love," Stacy said. "You didn't just protect them, you loved them." For a long moment, Eli said nothing. Then he nodded. "Okay, but no more disappearing." "Never again," Stacy whispered. Spring came early that year. The snow had melted into thick patches of damp earth and grass, and tiny buds dotted the trees that lined the back of Matthew's property. The air was still crisp, but the sun now warmed Eli's face when he stepped outside with Luna in his arms and Charlie toddling beside him. The mansion didn't feel like a mansion anymore. It felt like home. Inside, Hope was giggling in the kitchen as Stacy spooned mashed banana onto her high chair tray. Mrs. Delaney was humming to herself while preparing lunch, and Matthew was on the phone in his office, trying to arrange a donation drop-off for a local shelter. It was a quiet kind of chaos, the good kind. Eli sat down on the patio steps with Luna. He was taller now, stronger somehow, not just physically, but in presence. He still had a long way to go. Therapy sessions, court dates, school catch-up work. But he wasn't facing it alone. It had taken weeks of careful meetings, paperwork, and supervised visits. But Jordan had helped them craft a shared custody agreement. Stacy wasn't the woman she once was. She was healthier now, committed. But she never pretended the past didn't happen. That honesty had helped rebuild the bridge between them. "Eli," she called from the back door. "Luna's got a doctor's checkup at 3. Want to ride with us?" "Yeah," he called back. "Just let me grab her blanket." By the time he stepped back inside, Charlie was waddling toward him with one of Eli's sneakers in his hand. Eli laughed, scooped him up, and held him close. "Still my little helper, huh?" Charlie gurgled in agreement. Later that evening, after the babies were down and the kitchen had been cleaned, Eli found himself alone with Matthew on the porch. The older man sipped tea while Eli stared out at the darkening sky. "You thinking about what's next?" Matthew asked. Eli nodded. "Jordan said we can start the process soon." Matthew raised an eyebrow. "You're sure?" "Yeah," Eli said quietly. "I want to be their legal guardian someday, not just the kid who kept them alive, the one who gets to walk them to school, buy them birthday presents, see them grow up." Matthew smiled. "I think you'll make a damn good one." Eli looked up. "You think so?" "I know so," he said. "You turned a freezing night in the snow into the start of a family. That's not something many people could do." They sat in silence for a while longer, stars blinking to life overhead. Back inside, the babies stirred in their sleep. Stacy and Mrs. Delaney laughed softly over a TV show, and the mansion, once cold and cavernous, now echoed with warmth and love. Eli closed his eyes and breathed deep. He had once been a boy wandering in the snow, burdened by the impossible weight of 3 tiny lives. Now he was their brother, their protector, their future. And for the first time ever, Eli wasn't just surviving, he was home. Eli's journey from a cold, abandoned cabin to the warmth of a real family shows that love, resilience, and the kindness of strangers can rewrite even the harshest stories. Through trust, healing, and second chances, he didn't just find safety, he found belonging, purpose, and a forever home. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. And remember, sometimes the smallest act of compassion can change someone's entire world. Stay kind, stay human.